Welcome to Weekly News Highlights, where we wrap up your week with a glimpse back into what went on over the past week. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. The Korea Economy Research Institute believes South Korea's economy will rebound to the pre-pandemic levels, nearing 2% with strong exports like chips. But recovery in domestic consumption won't start until the latter half of the year, when interest rate cuts are expected. The European Parliament gave its final approval to wide-ranging rules to govern the rapidly evolving field of artificial intelligence. The ultimate goal is to allow for productive and sustainable innovations while safeguarding public interests. A South Korean national is being detained in Moscow following his arrest for spying in January, Russia's state media reported this week. This is the first reported case of its kind involving a South Korean. This week, the South Korean government has unveiled a new plan to increase financial support for smaller and specialty hospitals to address the problem of patients often flocking to major hospitals, causing disparity. It'll also revamp related systems so that more specialists than trainees can be hired.
The government's plan is to change the current medical insurance system based on hospital size. During a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo announced the measures to increase financial support for smaller specialty hospitals. Currently, hospitals in South Korea are categorized into primary small clinics, secondary specialty hospitals, and tertiary comprehensive hospitals. Han stated that the government will calculate insurance fees paid based on the medical capabilities of each hospital, not based on their size, to normalize the current healthcare system, which relies heavily on junior doctors. He said the current system gives the largest 5 hospitals in Seoul more support regardless of their actual medical performance or achievements.
Some small, specialized hospitals currently treat patients with severe problems at the same level as tertiary comprehensive hospitals. The government aims to reduce excessive dependence on junior doctors and is moving forward to establish an effective medical system.
Moreover, the Ministry of Health and Welfare will strengthen its assessments in hiring medical personnel for new medical institutions, doubling the number of specialists compared to trainee doctors.
The inconvenience in the medical field due to the departure of trainee doctors reflects a distorted reality that overly relies on them. In top-tier hospitals, the proportion of trainee doctors is about 40% and is abnormal when compared to countries such as the United States and Japan, where it's around 10%.
The ministry will also support national university hospitals and regional training hospitals in hiring more specialists to reduce the workload of trainee doctors, allowing them to focus on their training. It added that for specialists, long-term contracts will be promoted over the current customary practice of one-year short-term contracts to stabilize their employment environment. The government will hold a meeting on reforming the healthcare system, including discussions on increasing insurance fee payments and expanding the employment of specialists. 신윤, Arirang News.
South Korea will see 2% growth this year on the back of strong exports, according to the Korea Economy Research Institute. Now, the 2% growth would mean a rebound to the pre-pandemic levels. Shin Se-byuk has more.
In its latest economic outlook report released on Friday, the Korea Economic Research Institute forecasts that South Korea's economy will likely grow by 2% in 2024, returning to pre-COVID-19 levels. This forecast sits below earlier growth rates projected by major institutions, 2.1% by the Bank of Korea, 2.3% by the IMF, and 2.2% by the OECD. Kerry points out that global economic improvements and a surge in exports could drive recovery this year. However, domestic spending is expected to rebound only in the second half of the year, following anticipated interest rate cuts in late 2024. The report also warns that the recovery could be hampered by the economic downturn caused by higher interest rates and inflation, emphasizing that efficient management of private debt will be crucial for this year's economic performance. Furthermore, Kerry cautioned that a 2% growth rate may not be achievable if China's economic slowdown drags on. By sectors, private consumption, a key driver of domestic demand, is projected to see modest growth at 1.6%. This is largely attributed to decreased spending power due to household debt repayments. Inflation is expected to increase by 2.5%, aided by a weaker dollar and stable raw material costs, including international oil prices. Exports, which saw setbacks last year due to the IT sector's downturn, China's economic struggles and rising geopolitical tensions, are expected to rebound to 3.6%. The optimism is based on the global economic revival and an uptick in demand within the IT sector. Regarding South Korea's current account balance, Kerry forecast a surplus of $51 billion, bolstered by an expanded goods balance surplus. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Extravagant wedding costs have been a long pressure and even a burden for many couples here in South Korea, especially with limited access to information about costs that also vary by shop. The government is now making it mandatory for shops to display price tags. Lee Soo-jin tells us more.
South Korea will make it mandatory for wedding-related businesses to disclose their prices starting next year to improve transparency in the wedding industry. That's according to plans targeted toward young South Koreans announced during an emergency economic meeting led by Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok on Wednesday.
In the wedding sector, measures are being prepared to make it mandatory for businesses to provide information on prices for marriage-related goods and services that consumers can easily understand.
High wedding costs have plagued prospective couples for a while now, with numerous accounts of overspending due to the lack of information about various wedding services. To address this, the government will from next year require firms to disclose prices of wedding-related goods and services, such as dress and venue rentals and wedding photography, on the Korea Consumer Agency website. And in a move to further mitigate the price burden for prospective couples, the government is adding museums such as the National Museum of Korea and the National Library of Korea to the list of 120 public facilities already being used as wedding venues. The government also plans to revise regulations in new industries such as fintech and robotics. In Wednesday's meeting, the finance ministry announced plans to allow individuals to not just send Korean won, but also foreign-denominated currencies to others through prepaid electronic payment services, allowing people to more easily split the bill when traveling abroad. The government will also establish internal guidelines to allow the South Korean police to use patrol robots, as other countries have already begun deploying them to improve public safety. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The Russian presidential election is underway, and President Vladimir Putin insists that his country is technically ready for nuclear war, taking aim at the West. He also said North Korea has its own nuclear umbrella and that Pyongyang has not asked Moscow for any help. Our foreign affairs correspondent Peunji has more.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says the country is technically ready for nuclear war and a strong warning against the West. He told the country's Russia 1 television and news agency RIA on Wednesday that Russia would be ready to use nuclear weapons if its sovereignty was threatened. He said the U.S. understands that if it deploys American troops in Ukraine, Russia would see the move as an intervention. While adding that if the U.S. conducted nuclear tests, Russia might do the same, he said Moscow is not rushing toward nuclear confrontation and that he sees no need for the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine. On North Korea, he said the regime has its own nuclear umbrella, stressing that Pyongyang has not asked Moscow for any help.
President Putin's remarks were to indirectly emphasize that the development of North Korea's nuclear capabilities is based on the North's own technology, not the technical assistance from Russia.
This comes just 3 days before Russia's presidential election, which will take place for 3 days starting March 15th. The election will likely give President Putin, who's seeking a fifth term, another 6 years in power until 2030. Peunji, Arirang News.
While the North continues to brag about its new weapon, here in the South, Seoul and Washington jointly staged live fire drills using their own battle tanks and armored vehicles. Now, this wraps up their 11-day Freedom Shield exercise, which South Korea and the U.S. carried out from earlier this month. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung was on site and filed this report.
A ground-shaking blast followed by another seconds later. The combined forces of South Korea and the U.S. launched explosives one after another to swiftly advance into hypothetical enemy-controlled territory. A U.S. unmanned aerial vehicle flies over the enemy's territory to locate the target. Then, a K-30 gun and missile air defense system detects the enemy's aerial assets using its radar and blasts over 300 rounds of shells to shoot them down. This weapon can detect an enemy located within 21 kilometers and automatically fires once its target comes within the 3-kilometer range. 18 K-1A2 main battle tanks and 2 K-21 infantry fighting vehicles quickly advance into the enemy's territory and precisely strike the preset targets. Engineers from South Korea and the U.S. then fire multiple mine-clearing line charges to clear paths for tanks and vehicles through minefields and other obstacles. After shooting more than 200 rounds of shells, the Allies successfully conquer the enemy's base. The training took place on Thursday in South Korea's border city of Pocheon as the annual Seoul-Washington Freedom Shield exercise came to an end. The drills involved some 340 soldiers from South Korea's Capital Mechanized Infantry Division and the 2nd Infantry Division, a major U.S. ground combat unit in Korea.
Through this training, we were able to fully equip ourselves with combined combat capabilities that can overwhelm the enemy.
As you saw, they successfully executed their missions, and it showed that we are ready as a combined force to take on any challenges that we face here. That is the important part of what we do and why we train together regularly, to show that we are ready as a united front.
Kim Dami, Arirang News, Pocheon.
Russia's state media reported this week that a South Korean man was arrested earlier this year and is currently being detained on charges of spying. Moscow has been detaining several foreign nationals since the invasion of Ukraine, but it's the first such case to be reported involving a South Korean national. No details have been provided on the nature of the alleged spying other than the man, surnamed Beg, allegedly gathered and handed over intelligence to a foreign intelligence agency. Beg reportedly moved from China to Vladivostok in January, where he was arrested by the Russian Federal Security Service a few days after his arrival. In late February, he was transferred to Moscow and is being held in custody at Lefortovo in prison. Now, Moscow is reportedly in close communication with Seoul to work on possibly granting consular access to the man who is being held on espionage charges. Those convicted for espionage can face up to 20 years imprisonment in Russia. Russia has designated South Korea as an unfriendly country following Seoul's support for Western sanctions against Moscow over the war in Ukraine. If Beg's release is further delayed or if he is convicted, this may lead to closer ties between Russia and North Korea, threatening security on the Korean Peninsula. The EU set a global precedent by being the first to officially pass a law regulating AI. Now, under this new rule, AI technologies deemed high risk, especially those used in healthcare and education, must be under human control. And the law, which comes into effect at the end of 2024, will apply to any companies doing business in the EU. Shin Se-byuk reports.
The European Union has taken a groundbreaking step by officially passing the Artificial Intelligence Act, setting a new global benchmark in AI regulation. The European Parliament on Wednesday voted overwhelmingly in favor of the act, with 523 votes for, 46 against, and 49 abstentions. The pioneering act aims to ensure transparency and minimize the risks of AI use. The EU began drafting AI regulations in 2018, and the first draft was released in 2021. Since then, the EU has faced hurdles, including concerns over potential competitive disadvantages facing European companies. Nevertheless, a consensus was reached in December last year, recognizing the critical need to curb the risks of AI abuse by tech firms. With the approval, the Parliament said that the law has created a global standard in AI governance.
The first regulation in the world that is putting a clear path towards a safe and human-centric development of AI.
Set to go into effect by the end of the year, the law categorizes the application of AI into 4 risk levels: minimal, limited, high, and unacceptable. The use of AI in areas deemed to pose minimal risks, such as search engines, will not be subject to regulation. On the other hand, where there are limited risks, such as with chatbots, specific transparency obligations will need to be met. Technology related to healthcare and education, such as robot-assisted surgery, falls into the high-risk category. In these cases, government approval must be secured before development and human oversight must be ensured during use. Unacceptable use of AI due to extreme risk, including public-facing biometric systems and predictive policing, will be banned. However, there will be exceptions for law enforcement in cases such as searching for a missing person or preventing a terrorist attack subject to prior to court approval. Violators face steep penalties, including fines of up to almost $40 billion or up to 7% of their global annual turnover. 신세벽, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., the House of Representatives passed a bill that could eventually ban the social media platform TikTok in the country. As a Senate vote is still required, though, President Joe Biden is more than willing to sign the bill into law. Lee Seung-jae has more.
With overwhelming support, the U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday voted 352 to 65 in favor of passing a bill that would ultimately ban the use of a popular video sharing platform, TikTok. American lawmakers have been calling for a ban on the platform, arguing that it poses a national security threat due to the fact that it's run by Chinese-based parent company ByteDance, and the Chinese government could use information gathered through the platform to its advantage. Wisconsin Republican Representative Mike Gallagher, who is one of the co-sponsors of the bill, stressed before the vote that the bill forces TikTok to break up the Chinese Communist Party.
TikTok is a threat to our national security because it is owned by ByteDance, which does the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party. We know this because ByteDance leadership says so and because Chinese law requires it. This bill therefore forces TikTok to break up with the Chinese Communist Party.
If the bill is passed by the Senate and goes into effect, ByteDance must sell TikTok's U.S. business rights within 6 months. If the sale fails, Google Play, Apple App Store, and other app platforms will be banned from providing TikTok for download. The bipartisan vote by the House comes despite former President Donald Trump's opposition to banning the popular app. Trump had argued that banning TikTok would lead to the growth of Facebook, which he criticized as an enemy of the people. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said in a briefing on board Air Force One on Wednesday that the top office is pleased to see progress on the bill. She added that the legislation is important as the U.S. continues to address threats posed by foreign technology services that put U.S. national security and the personal information of Americans at risk. The press secretary further emphasized that the White House wants to make sure the bill is on the strongest legal footing possible. However, it remains to be seen whether the bill can be passed with as much support in the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has been non-committal about bringing it to the floor for a vote, while other lawmakers vow to oppose the passage of the bill. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Technology like artificial intelligence and robotics is not just used in industry, but is also making its ways into our daily lives. For more, we have our business correspondent An Sung-jin to discuss some insight in one of South Korea's key industries. Welcome, Sung-jin.
Thank you for having me here, Dami.
So, Sung-jin, what do you have for us today? I heard you've been visiting some interesting places.
Absolutely, Dami, and I'm glad that I'm here to share them with you. When we first think about robots that move or robots with arms, they seem like something from the distant future, but they're fast becoming part of our everyday lives. One of the key areas robots have been seeing use is in the service and food industries. Service robots are looking to be a tangible part of our daily lives as they're already making outdoor deliveries in some places. This robot strolling down the street is on its way to deliver a freshly packed meal without any human assistance. The company behind it has created indoor and outdoor autonomous delivery robots. Based on a deep learning algorithm, the robot can detect obstacles and wait for traffic lights as it heads to its destination. These robotic workers focus on short-distance delivery from restaurants and cafes to nearby offices and residential areas, while indoor robots work in hotels and offices. Similarly, another company develops serving robots for the restaurant industry and has more than 2,000 robots working in restaurants all over the country.
Well, I definitely need one of those delivery robots. And robots seem to be quite spread across the country. Now, the question is, why are these companies so focused on developing these type of robots?
Well, Tommy, I'm glad that you pointed that out. I've talked with one of the CEOs from the companies that I visited, and he provided some insight on his reasoning behind robots and labor shortages.
Many people are concerned that robots will take jobs from humans, but the 3D, dirty, dangerous and demeaning jobs are already in need of workers. If robots can provide not only delivery services, but also fill labor shortages in these areas, that's the ultimate goal that would fill us with a great deal of pride.
Surely robots can be one solution to South Korea's decreasing population. Now, Sungjin, we have more than just these delivery robots, right?
Of course, Tommy. There are many more integrated in our daily lives. I've mentioned delivery service robots in the restaurant industry, but there are other robots that are a bit more directly involved in the process of cooking. This middle school in Seoul, South Korea is the first to use robots to help cook lunch. Rather than workers standing in front of steaming pots and pans, robots do it instead. Research has shown that being exposed to fumes in restaurant and cafeteria kitchens can lead to lung cancer. So the Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education introduced robots to improve the working environment for kitchen staff. It's not just schools that are using them. Expressway rest areas are doing so as well.
Not only does it ensure consistency in taste and quality, but our chefs have also said that they are more satisfied as cooking has become more efficient and easier.
Sungjin, you have to tell us how these robots actually work.
Absolutely. So robots here put the ingredients into a pan, then put them on the stove and pour them into a bowl. One particular robot actually is able to stir the ramen at a certain speed as well.
Now, that's very impressive. Now, how is South Korea trying to develop it even further?
Robots are actually becoming a key aspect in multiple industries, as you've just seen with the places that I visited. As the food tech market is expected to further grow, Korea is definitely trying to do more. Professor Lee explains in detail why so.
The integration of robots in the food industry is expected to progress rapidly as it improves hygiene and quality in the kitchen. The problem is not that these robots are replacing people as workers, as the restaurant industry is already lacking in manpower. It's cooperation that's going to be needed.
The Food and Agriculture Ministry has pledged to increase the budget for food tech to $48.6 million this year. More specifically, it's planning to invest in R&D. The South Korean government also announced plans to provide 1 million robots in the industrial sector by investing more than 3 trillion won, or $2.27 billion by the year 2030. The Trade Ministry also aims to loosen 51 robot-related regulations that have hampered further use, especially for autonomous robots.
It looks like there's still room for the robot industry for South Korea to invest in.
And I'm very excited to see where it goes.
All right, thank you for sharing the latest, Sungjin, today.
No worries, my pleasure, Dami.
Global superstar BTS Tong standing next to you, the third release from his debut solo album Golden, has stayed on the US Billboard's Hot 100 Mains singles chart for 18 consecutive weeks. Now, this makes him the second longest charting K-pop solo artist after Psy, whose song Gangnam Style was on the chart for 31 straight weeks in 2012. Also, My Name is Logi-wan, a South Korean Netflix movie starring actor Song Joong-ki, has topped the company's most viewed non-English movies list. The global streaming service announced on Wednesday that from March 4th until the 10th, the movie recorded over 5.1 million views to sit on top of the weekly top 10 list. And it's K-content like Jungkook's song and South Korean Netflix movie My Name is Logi-wan that is attracting people to visit South Korea, with many of those tourists turning out to be aged 30 or even younger. Lee Seung-jae with this report.
From K-pop idols BTS and Blackpink to Korea's Oscar-winning Parasite and Netflix smash hit series Squid Game, and even tteokbokki and kimbap, The growing love for Korea's music, entertainment, food, and culture have led to a huge increase in the flow of younger tourists coming into the country. According to the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute on Monday, a survey conducted on 4,000 foreign travelers who visited South Korea between October and December last year showed that over 31% became interested in traveling to the country after encountering Korean wave content. And the variety of foods appearing in Korean movies and dramas has led to more and more people from around the globe becoming interested in Korean food outside of the usual bibimbap or Korean barbecue. Data from the Korea Tourism Organization on Monday also showed that visitors to South Korea are getting younger thanks to the growing interest in the Korean wave. Among the over 11 million foreign visitors who arrived in South Korea in 2023, 35.6% of them were under the age of 30. More specifically, those aged 21 to 30 accounted for 25.3%, or 2.79 million people, while those aged 20 or younger accounted for 10.3%, or 1.14 million people. The proportion of foreign visitors under the age of 30 stood at 27.6% in 2013, an 8.1 percentage point jump from 10 years earlier. And to cater to the growing number of younger visitors to the country, the Culture Ministry, alongside the Korea Tourism Organization, are looking to bring even more foreign travelers into the country by targeting those interested in esports and K-beauty. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
That is all we have for this week. We thank you for watching Weekly News Highlights. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.